In the year to March 2018, Burberry destroyed $28.6 million worth of finished goods. Not retail value, cost. Products that had already been designed, manufactured, shipped, stored, and then deliberately destroyed. The year before, Burberry reported $26.9 million. The year before that, $18.8 million. And nobody exposed this in a leak. Burberry printed the numbers in its own annual report because destroyed inventory is a business cost, and business costs go in the accounts. The obvious reaction is, why not just sell it? Even at a discount, something is better than nothing, except that misses the entire economics of luxury. Those products were not destroyed because they were worthless. They were destroyed because they were still valuable enough that people would happily buy them for less. And sometimes, letting them do that is more dangerous to the company than destroying the goods. A product can be valuable enough that the safest place for it is nowhere. To understand why, separate two assets. There's the product itself, and there's the belief about what the product is worth. Imagine a bag selling for $2,000. The leather has value. The labor has value. The hardware has value. But those things do not explain a $2,000 price by themselves. Part of the asset lives inside the customer's mind. Prestige, scarcity, status, the belief that this thing belongs at this price. Now take last season's bags and put them everywhere for $300. You recovered cash. But you also taught customers something. Wait, why buy a $2,000? Maybe it will be $300 later. And if it can be $300 later, what exactly was the $2,000? A discount doesn't merely move old inventory. It creates a second reference price. And once customers learn that number, they carry it into the next season. For businesses whose margins depend on customers believing the current price will hold, that lesson can be incredibly expensive, which creates an obvious question. Why destroy anything? Why not send old products somewhere quieter? Brands do that too. Outlet stores were originally a perfect solution. Send leftovers. Past season inventory. Factory seconds. Keep the discounted merchandise away from the flagship. Clear stock without making every full-price customer watch. But outlets developed a strange problem. If you operate hundreds of outlet stores year-round, you cannot depend on mistakes to fill them. Unsold inventory is unpredictable. The outlet needs new merchandise every week. So many brands began manufacturing products specifically for outlets. A 2026 Consumer's Checkbook investigation studied 40 brands operating outlet or factory stores. It found that about half were selling only or mostly merchandise specifically made for the outlet channel. Not leftovers, not damaged full-price merchandise. New products manufactured for the discount store, often using different materials or construction. That is economically fascinating. Companies built an entire parallel product stream so customers could receive the feeling of buying the brand at a discount without forcing large amounts of genuine flagship merchandise to appear cheaply. Think about what that says about the value of the full-price product. A company may prefer to design a cheaper second version, manufacture it, ship it, and sell it through a separate channel, rather than teach customers that the original product itself is available for a fraction of the price. That's how valuable the reference price can be. And once you understand that, destruction stops looking like the only strange option. It becomes one point on a larger system designed to protect the price. Full-price store, outlet channel, controlled discounting, buybacks, destruction. Different tools for the same problem. How do you remove excess inventory without teaching customers to stop paying full price? Luxury watchmakers have faced the same problem. Richemont, owner of brands including Cartier, spent hundreds of millions of euros buying unsold watches back from retailers when excess dealer inventory threatened discounting. Because once dealers become desperate enough to move stock, the market finds the real clearing price. And if a watch that is supposed to be scarce becomes widely available below list price, the discount becomes part of the product's reputation. Sometimes it is cheaper to buy the watches back than to let the market answer the question, what are these actually worth today? There's also a less glamorous part of the ledger. Customs. When imported goods enter a country, companies may pay duties and other charges. Under U.S. customs law, certain qualifying unused imported merchandise that is later exported or destroyed under customs supervision can qualify for duty drawback, potentially refunding up to 99% of eligible duties, taxes, and fees. That does not mean Burberry's destruction program was driven by U.S. duty drawback. It does not mean every destroyed luxury product generates a customs refund. Eligibility depends on the merchandise, documentation, jurisdiction, and specific transaction. But it demonstrates something important. Destroying merchandise is not always economically identical to setting the entire original cost on fire. In some situations, the accounting can recover part of what was paid at import, which makes destruction slightly less irrational and therefore slightly easier for a business to choose. But now, the calculation is changing. On July 19, 2026, the European Union began prohibiting large companies from destroying unsold clothing, accessories, and footwear, subject to defined exceptions. Medium-sized companies are scheduled to follow in 2030, and the scale behind the rule is enormous. The European Environment Agency estimates that roughly 4 to 9% of textile products placed on the EU market are destroyed before ever being used for their intended purpose. Somewhere between about 264,000 and 194,000 tons every year. Products made, resources consumed, goods transported, and then never worn. But the next stage may be even more uncomfortable for companies. Starting in February 2027, standardized EU disclosure requirements will make businesses report information about unsold consumer goods they discard. That means unwanted inventory becomes visible as a comparable number. Investors can see it. Journalists can see it. Customers can see it. Competitors can see it. And disclosure matters because Burberry already showed what happens when a number that technically existed inside financial reporting suddenly becomes socially legible. The company had disclosed destruction costs publicly, but when the wider public noticed that $28.6 million figure, the backlash was intense. In September 2018, Burberry announced that it would stop destroying unsaleable finished products. The number had not changed. The audience had. A practice that made sense inside an inventory system became much harder to defend once customers pictured the actual objects being destroyed. Now look at the real ledger. Somewhere there was a customer who wanted one of those products. Maybe not for $2,000. Maybe for $300. The product already existed. The factory had already made it. The shipping had already happened. The inventory cost had already been incurred. At $300, that person might have bought it. But the company could rationally decide, no. Not because selling it to that customer produces zero money, but because serving that customer creates information. It tells other people what happens when they wait. It places a lower price into the market. It changes what the brand means. So the customer is deliberately excluded. That is different from the economics of free shipping. Different from payment fees. Different from a simple cost being passed along. Here, the hidden decision is that one customer's willingness to pay is less valuable than preserving another customer's willingness to pay more. The person with $300 is not merely priced out. In some cases, the company would rather destroy the product than create a market for that person. That is the real transfer. Potential consumer value is sacrificed to defend price perception. And then there is the environmental cost. Water, energy, cotton, synthetic fibers, dyes, factory labor, freight, warehousing, all used to create an object that never performs the job it was made to perform. Those costs do not disappear because the inventory is written off. They simply sit outside the customer's receipt. That is why regulation entered the picture. The market had a reason to destroy certain goods. Environmental policy is effectively saying that private calculation ignores too much of the public cost. And now, companies have to solve the original problem differently. Produce less. Forecast better. Resell. Reuse. Repair. Redirect. Recycle where appropriate. Or find another way to protect the brand without destroying usable inventory, which may reveal the strangest part of the entire business model. For years, companies sometimes looked at perfectly usable merchandise, knew somebody would happily pay money for it, and still decided the economically safer outcome was for nobody to own it. Not because the product had lost all value, because it had retained too much. Enough value to create a lower market price. Enough value to teach customers to wait. Enough value to threaten the number the company needed inside everybody else's head. They were not destroying worthless goods. They were making sure you never found out what those goods could have sold for.